Unit 4, we will have a closer look at rules of spelling and punctuation. This unit is divided into 5 sections. Section 1. British or American English. If you apply the above explained insights on proper academic style and coherent logical argumentation, your writing will communicate the content and aim of your research. However, it is possible to spoil a structured and coherent text by neglecting some fundamental rules of proper English. Being on safe ground regarding grammar, spelling, and punctuation in an English written research paper starts with the decision whether to use British English or American English. After the language is chosen according to the requirements of the research context, it has to be used consequently and thoroughly. British and American English differ in certain spelling rules and grammar rules and sometimes in vocabulary. Accordingly, adjust your spell checker and grammar checker to British English or American English. Independently of the language chosen, do not entirely rely on the error spotting programs, since their corrections or non-corrections might not match the context. Section 2. British versus American English Spelling. In the following, there is a list of some of the main differences between British and American spelling. It refers to the different use of certain endings, doubled consonants, and umlauts. The different notation of endings is as follows. The ending RE in British English is spelled ER in American English, as in center, theater, liter, fiber. The ending ISE in British English is spelled IZE or IZE in American English, as in organize, recognize, realize. British verbs ending in YSE always end in YZE or YZE in American English, as in analyze, paralyze, etc. Accordingly, nouns derived from a verb with these endings are spelled either with S in British or with Z or Z in American, as for example the nouns globalization or securitization. Regarding the above-mentioned endings, the American spelling containing the Z or Z is sometimes accepted in British English. In academic writing, however, it is preferable to use the spelling as shown in the list. The verb practice ends in ISE in British English, whereas it ends in ICE in American. Nouns ending in OUR in British English lose the U in American English, as in labor, color, behavior, neighbor, etc. The British ending CE is spelled SE in American English, as in license, defense, or offense. The British ending GUE is spelled G in American, while the British GUE is also accepted, as for example in catalog or analog. In British and American spelling, some distinctions are made in doubled consonants. If the consonant L is followed by a vowel, it doubles in British English, as for instance in modeling, traveler, counselor, in contrast to American spelling. However, the infinitive form of the verb fulfill ends in IL in British and in ILL in American spelling. British nouns ending in double ME end in M in American spelling, as in program or kilogram. Umlauts are sometimes spelled in a simplified way in American English, as seen in the words pediatric and aesthetic, as well as maneuver and homeopathic. In British English, the past simple, respectively past participle of verbs as learn, spoil, or burn is spelled in the irregular form ending in T. In American spelling, the regular form and the irregular form are possible. That is, learned or learned, spoiled or spoiled, burned or burned. In British English, headlines are written in upper and lower case, whereas in American English, essential words within the headline are often capitalized, as shown in our example, differences in spelling and punctuation. Section 3. British versus American English, vocabulary. In addition to different spelling, there are some differences in British and American vocabulary. Here are some examples of different vocabulary that has the same meaning. British English, solicitor. American English, attorney. British English, shop. American English, store. British English, black economy. American English, underground economy. British English, financial year. American English, fiscal year. British English, share option. American English, stock option. British English, trade union. American English, labor union. Section 4. Punctuation. Punctuation is not just a matter of rules. Skillfully applied, punctuation serves as a guide for the reader and defines the precise meaning of the text. This is especially the case when using or not using commas. There's no comma before dependent clauses beginning with that, what, or whether. The author states that she has supervised the experiment. The professor explains whether the graphic is important or not. It is the result that counts. There is no comma before and after defining or restrictive relative clauses. A defining or restrictive clause is a clause that cannot be omitted without changing the meaning of the sentence. Example: students who succeed in writing receive better grades. If the defining relative clause, who succeed in writing, is omitted, the sentence, students receive better grades, has lost its meaning. The same rule applies to defining or restrictive participles. These participles are not set off by commas. Example: authors writing a research paper should use academic language. If the defining participle writing a research paper is omitted, the remaining sentence, authors should use academic language, has lost its meaning. Do not use a comma before an adverbial clause. Example: the research is inadequate if it is not laid out in proper writing. Accordingly, do not use a comma before an infinitive phrase. Example: he submitted the paper to finish the course. However, if an adverbial clause or infinitive phrase serve as an introductory element of the sentence, the adverbial clause or infinitive phrase are followed by a comma. Accordingly, use a comma after an adverbial clause, such as if students practice academic writing, comma, their results improve. Use a comma after an infinitive phrase, such as to obtain the certificate, comma, the student had to finish the paper. Generally, the introductory element of a sentence is followed by a comma. Introductory elements are, for example, adverbs, as in however, adverb, comma, the findings do not confirm that. Thus, adverb, comma, it can be concluded, and so on. Furthermore, introductory elements can be prepositional phrases. Accordingly, prepositional phrases, if placed at the beginning of the sentence, are set off by a comma. Examples: from a bank's perspective, comma, the financing will have to be structured. Or, after the successful completion of the research, comma, the article will be published. If a specific element of the sentence should be emphasized, it can be put in front of the sentence, followed by a comma to separate it. Example: to him, comma, the approaches are not as different as the colleague researchers consider them. Commas are used to set off parenthetical elements. Parenthetical elements are parts of sentences that are not essential to the main information and can be omitted without changing the central meaning of the sentence. A typical parenthetical element is the apposition or appositive. A non-restrictive apposition gives information about the preceding subject but can be omitted without changing the meaning of the sentence. Example: an academic research project, a typical challenge for every student, requires special efforts. Commas are used for setting off non-defining, which means non-restrictive relative clauses. Example: Miller, who has published 3 books on the topic, takes a different approach. The non-restrictive relative clause gives additional information about the subject, but, if omitted, does not alter the meaning of the sentence. The sentence, Miller takes a different approach, is still valid. A similar parenthetical element is the non-defining or non-restrictive participle phrase. Example: Miller, known for his expertise on finance, has published his 3rd book. In academic writing, special attention should be put on exclamation marks, question marks, hyphen, and dashes. Exclamation marks and question marks should be avoided, as well as exclamations and questions implying the use of an exclamation mark, respectively a question mark. Do not state exclamations such as, "What a precise definition this is," but prefer a regular sentence such as, "This is a precise definition." Do not write, "Why round this number? The reason is," but "the number has to be rounded because." Some written pieces lack accuracy because the author had not thoroughly distinguished between hyphen and dash. Hyphens are used to create hyphenated compound words such as a 20-year-old or the so-called pay-on-production model. Dashes are used to set off a parenthetical part of a sentence. For example, funding, dash, if private or public, dash, has to be structured thoroughly. Section 5. Special characters, symbols, figures. In academic writing, it is advisable to avoid the careless use of special characters, symbols, and figures. Avoid the unnecessary use of special characters in headlines and texts. As shown in the example headlines, the use of slash, backslash, at, etc. makes no sense. Exception. It goes without saying that the use of special characters is necessary in case of computer codes, technical terms, and names as shown in the examples. Do not use the ampersand as a substitute for and. For example, not bonds, ampersand loans, but bonds and loans. In contrast, use the ampersand as a substitute for and in case of technical terms and names. Example, mergers, ampersand, acquisitions. Or, another example, Miller, ampersand, Sons, Limited. Do not use mathematical symbols as substitutes for words. For example, not bonds plus loans, but bonds and loans. Do not use figures as artificial substitutes for words. For example, not strategy, figure for marketing, but strategy for marketing. Do not decorate your text by using graphic symbols, icons, etc., as shown in the examples adorned with symbols to express different emotions.